I'm willing to bet everyone has at least heard of the American Red Cross. But does anybody know how it started or who started it? The American Red Cross is one of the most notable charitable organizations, and its iconic emblem of a red cross on a white background has been the symbol for relief and humanitarian aid for over a century. For an organization that has existed for 131 years in a country as young as the United States, that kind of history itself is something that should be celebrated. That is why today I will share with you the origin of the American Red Cross and what makes it a cherished American institution today. Clara Barton was born 1821 in North Oxford, Massachusetts, where she had her first career at 17 as a school teacher in a one-room schoolhouse. After about a decade, Clara began to question her life, and she went back to school at the Clinton Liberal Institute in New York. Though while she was there, her mother passed away, so she moved back home in 1854. On a whim, Clara moved to Washington, D.C., where she was a clerk at a U.S. Patent Office. She continued her work there through the beginning of the Civil War. As Union soldiers battled with the Confederates, Clara was ready to help with the wounded. Soon she was on the front lines, and in 1862 she earned herself the name Angel of the Battlefield. She fed soldiers, washed hands and feet, wrote letters home, stood by deathbeds, and took care of the ill and wounded. Clara continued to volunteer her services throughout the Civil War, and by the time the battle was over, she was given the task to identify the tens of thousands of missing men. By 1896, she answered more than 63,000 letters and identified 22,000 missing Union soldiers. Now that her Civil War duty was over, Clara began to get depressed. She took off to Europe, where she visited friends and family in Switzerland. Her life changed forever, though, when she met a man in Geneva working under the symbol of the Red Cross. When France declared war on Prussia, Clara seized the opportunity to help and applied to the Red Cross. Though helping out more with civilians, she earned herself a party commemorating all the good work she did in helping the French people. Clara finally headed home, and with some convincing, in 1881, President Garfield signed the Treaty of Geneva, and after several meetings, established the American Association of the Red Cross. Just after opening the first local chapter in Dansville, New York, Clara and the Red Cross were called to duty as forest fires raged in Michigan. Together, Clara and the Red Cross continued to aid victims in major natural disasters throughout the years, though rumors of financial problems were circulating. Despite all of that, in 1889, Clara traveled to Johnstown, Pennsylvania to help with a flood where she and workers set up shelters for dislocated victims. In all, they helped about 25,000 people. On April 25, 1898, Congress declared war on Spain. The American Red Cross was caught in conflict as they were aiding Cubans in Spanish-occupied Cuba. The U.S. Navy wouldn't allow supplies to enter Cuba for fear they might end up in the enemy's hands. After about 2 months of waiting, they were allowed to go, and within 24 hours had fed over 10,000 people in Cuba. Even though the Red Cross was succeeding in upholding the Treaty of Geneva and providing aid to those in disaster, Clara herself was facing some negative criticism from officials, again, about her poor financial record keeping. On May 14, 1904, Clara Barton resigned the presidency of the American Red Cross. She passed away April 12, 1912. She was 91. Between 1900 and 1919, the American Red Cross provided aid to 44 disasters, including 16 overseas. They also officially adopted programs for first aid, water safety, and nursing classes, as well as their continuing program of selling Christmas seals to combat tuberculosis. World War I began in Europe in 1914, where the Red Cross was there with nurses, packages, and supplies. The war helped expand the American Red Cross by adding local chapters, volunteers, and funds. After the war, the Red Cross responded to several natural disasters, including Mississippi and Ohio River floods in 1927 and 37. They set up temporary shelters and fed tens of thousands of victims. Then along came drought and depression of the late 1930s. Nearly 6 million needy families around the country received assistance. It was during this time the American Red Cross workers were taking the first steps in what later would become the American Red Cross Blood Service. By the time the United States entered World War II, nearly every American family had at least someone involved with the Red Cross. And while Marines stormed the beaches of Guadalcanal in 1942, volunteers were busy at home collecting scraps, serving in hospitals, and aided military personnel. In addition to the help on the home front, 28 million care packages were sent to U.S. and Allied POWs, along with thousands of nurses and donated blood. The famous Rainbow Corner Club was also started in London. When the war was over, the American Red Cross helped reunite family members separated by the conflict. Several Red Cross chapters helped out veterans returning from the Korean, Vietnam, and Gulf Wars by providing the same world-class humanitarian aid that Clara Barton took pride in doing herself over a century ago. As new technologies emerged, the Red Cross followed suit with radio communications, computers, and satellites. But with these new technologies also came a new kind of disaster, man-made disasters, such as chemical plant accidents, oil spills, and even terrorism. Another challenge was brought to the American Red Cross was one of the most serious public health threats of the century, AIDS. This prompted public AIDS education program. Last year alone, the American Red Cross helped out in several types of major disasters, such as 45 multi-family fires, 27 floods, 10 wildfires, and even an earthquake. They helped by opening over 1,000 shelters, sending more than 6 million snacks and meals, more than 2 million relief items, and almost 28,000 disaster workers. As for the future, only time will tell. But I hear they have plans to focus efforts in Haiti in long-term recovery, including a $100 million permanent housing project. Americans continue to help each other through the Red Cross. The programs offered are made possible by the volunteers and the financial support of the American people. Without this, it would be impossible to expand the Red Cross's main aim of preventing and relieving suffering. Thank you.